everybody, it's Joe Parrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your gun dog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your gun dog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It Fetched It. This week I am going to be talking to the LWDG mindset coach Emma Liddell, who helps our society members every single week to feel fabulous about themselves and their training. This week we're going to be talking all about a treat for the dog, but what about me? How can we go about rewarding ourselves? So firstly, let's say a big hello to Emma. How are you today, Emma?
I'm really good. I'm really looking forward to doing this podcast because rewarding ourselves and looking after ourselves is something that I'm really passionate about.
As I just mentioned, you are our LWDG mindset coach. So every single Monday you sprinkle us all with fairy dust of do this, let's go out and do this. And it does without doubt put our whole community in a fabulous mindset for the week ahead. And we wanted to take a little bit of your fairy dust sprinkling into this podcast. Talk about something we think our members should do, but that everyone should do. And that is prioritize self-rewarding for ourselves. Like we talk about self-rewarding for the dog, and why and how we control that, but we don't talk a lot about how important it is to self-reward and self-care for ourselves, do we?
No, and I think when you suggested the topic to me a little while ago, I was like, that's a genius idea because there are so many of us that have probably endless debates, even with my friends, about what do you have as a treat for your dog, whether it's obviously, I don't know, a tug toy or a ball or whatever we use to train our dogs to reward them, or food. I've got a whole room, I'm embarrassed to say, at least a cupboard full of different treats where I'm like, this is going to be the next new magic treat that my dog's going to love. So it's something we talk about when we talk about rewarding our dog. Do we reward them with touch? Do we reward them with play? Do we reward them with food? But it's not something we've touched about. How do we reward ourselves?
As you've probably said that, the listeners have probably thought, oh my God, I've never even thought about this. But how can we recognize when we need to take a step back and reward ourselves for our efforts in dog training?
I think rewards should come after every session, really, because we've shown up and we've done it. And for a lot of us, that in itself is a big deal, depending what's going on in our home lives, depending on how busy our lives are that we juggle, or emotionally we just don't feel up to it. We've got the blues, or we're really struggling through a difficult part of our training, or we just don't have the right vibe that day. And to still show up and train our dog in itself is an achievement, regardless of whether it goes to the plan we intended or not. So just for the fact that you've shown up, and I'm not saying that means that you can just discount everything and say, I've shown up, so that's good enough, because obviously we still need to put the care and attention into the dogs that we're training. But the fact that we've actually committed to the time for ourselves and our dogs in itself is quite an important thing to recognise.
When we talk about rewarding ourselves, give me some examples of like small things we can do, like on or off the field, to just reward ourselves a little bit for when we are doing well.
And you know what? This is a really interesting idea because most of us see a reward as buying ourselves something. So when we talk about things, it's generally about buying ourselves something or eating something. I've had a really terrible day, therefore I'm going to eat a chocolate bar, or I'm going to get a takeaway, or I'm going to have an extra glass of wine or gin or whatever our tickler fancy is. Or certainly, and this is something you guys will have heard many times before, I'm a self-confessed gun dog stuff addict. It's like, oh, I'm going to treat myself to that new dummy, or I'm going to treat myself to that new training vest. Now, that's often for two reasons. One is potentially because the training hasn't gone to plan, and I'm assuming that this magical new dummy in my life or vest is going to make me a brilliant dog trainer, when the reality is it's probably not going to change that much, although there's some great products out there to help our dogs. But it's about understanding the difference between a pick-me-up, which is what they are, and actually a reward. And pick-me-ups are different, and sometimes, if we're really honest with ourselves, can be a little bit unhealthy at times if taken to the extreme, whereas a reward is actually doing something which is going to nourish ourselves. So I don't think, unfortunately, a chocolate bar, as much as it's going to hit the spot, is going to nourish ourselves. A new dummy, although very pretty and very exciting when we open the packaging, it's not going to nourish me. So a reward is something that's generally quite positive and nourishing. So that might be around spending time in nature, taking a deep breath. It might be around journaling, actually what went really well that day and reflecting and going, oh my God, that was really good. It might be sending that video to one of your friends that you know is absolutely going to celebrate, or putting it on the forum. It might be going to bed a little bit earlier that evening. It might be actually picking up some really nice, tasty, nutritious food on the way home. It doesn't have to be boring and horrible, just something that you really, there can be so many different ways which we can reward ourselves. But pick me ups and rewards to me are very different.
Yeah, because like when you mentioned there buying a dummy, really that's a reward for the dog, not us, because we don't run around with it in our mouth. But it's finding things, like you said, that are little and make a difference. But also it's remembering the underlying concept here. We reward our dogs for positive reinforcement, work done well, building habits. We can apply that principle very quickly, very easily to us as humans, because that's what it initially was created for, if that makes sense. We do need positive reinforcement, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. If we think about it from that classical conditioning perspective, or as Claire often says, it's about putting money in the bank, isn't it? It's about reinforcing, putting money in the bank all the time. It's the same thing for us. We are still animals at the end of the day. We're very complex, confused ones a lot of the time, but we're still animals. So it's about being able to say, and sometimes it's around that level of motivation. If I do this, at the end of it, I'm going to do that. Now, again, it's what that is that we need to focus on. So it might be, right, regardless of my training exercise, on the drive home, I'm going to put on, I don't know, my favourite playlist, and I'm going to have a good old sing song, regardless of whether the training's gone or poorly. So it doesn't necessarily have to cost us anything. We often think it's got a financial implication. It can just be something really nice, having our favourite cup of tea in the garden afterwards, flicking through a magazine and just going, oh, I'm just going to take 10 minutes to myself because that was a tough session, or actually I worked really hard there.
I've been amazed in the journey that I've gone through over the last year with my blood pressure, and I think everything happens for a reason. But for what I've learned about how little I have been rewarding myself and how little I need to do to reward myself. So I've had to learn things like 10 minutes reading a fiction book really helps me. I really have got back into reading. Like, I've read all my life, but for many years they've been self-development, learning how to improve the business, how to improve mindset, but always been learning in a theoretical or a bettering myself perspective, rather than reading about fairies that are taking over the world. Do you know what I mean? And one does a very different job to the other, doesn't it?
Yeah, because when you're reading that personal development book, you're not just reading it and enjoying it, you're contemplating. You're thinking about, how does this relate to me? Is there a pattern in there? Is it something I need to look at doing differently? How would I do that differently? Whereas when you're reading your story about fairies taking over the world, you're just enjoying the story of fairies taking over the world. So it takes a different level of intensity to do that. And escapism is really important, as long as it's not avoiding us engaging in life, which is why we like going to the theatre, we like listening to music, we like reading books, we like watching stuff on television, because it takes us out of our life for a short period of time, which can actually be a really lovely bit of respite when our world is quite difficult.
And I think when we're looking at rewards, like little rewards for ourselves, like you said, a cup of tea, a breathing exercise. Even for me, I would have somebody said to me, oh, reward yourself with a breathing exercise. With all I know, I would have probably said that is not going to be rewarding to me. However, I've learned that actually grounding myself and stopping for a second and really stopping, like stopping the thoughts, just observing the thoughts rather than thinking the thoughts, and just being grounded, I find a massive relief from it. I find a massive surge of happiness. Even things down to looking at something that I've bought in the past, which I love, like looking at, I don't know, a painting or a vase or something, or a piece of jewelry, and looking in, just thinking back to that time and just stopping. Little tiny rewards. They don't, like you say, they don't have to be these big gestures. They don't have to be a day at the spa.
No, not at all. And I think we still focus on that. And it was something I was reflecting on last night. I was showing someone some family heirlooms, like my grandfather's fountain pen and things like that. And the surge of kind of happiness that I had from being able to talk through this story of this fountain pen and how it's found its way into my care and all those other things means so much more than, I don't know, me going online to Amazon and buying 6 or 7 items and getting excited about them being delivered the next day, but they're being relatively meaningless. So it's about what we give meaning to. And one of the things that we touched on before recording this podcast is actually, what about our dog? Because actually, for most of us, our dogs, as much as they cause us a significant amount of frustration, for a lot of us, they give us meaning. We've all chosen to have these dogs in our life. We've all chosen to have these quite complex, high drive breeds. And as much as it sometimes feels like we have to reward ourselves for surviving the dog training session, can we not incorporate the dog into that?
Yeah, because like we had a chat about, I reward the dogs with touch, but they are really short, but they're very brief because too overexcited spaniels, a little bit too much. You've got to control that for them. But I could stop and, as a way of rewarding myself, stop and just sit down with them and just stroke them and just get them to settle with me. And it's great for them. It's another form of training for them. And it's great for me because it just gives me a moment of relaxation.
And it's a two-way street. We think we're touching the dog because the dog gets the reward. Actually, we do as well. And it's something that I've been thinking about very much now that I've got my third dog, which some of you will have seen on the group, Watson, is actually with Scout, I did a lot of playing with him. So in the middle of the session, because he could cope with that, he wouldn't get too overexcited, some of our dogs might, is that I would just play with him and I'd run around with him and he'd jump up and he'd be like, this is great, this is fun. And it would be really fun. Like all the training, it would still be within confined boundaries, but all the training, all this formalness of training would go out of the window. And it could just be me and my dog having a laugh together. Now with Watson, I've spent a huge amount of time just sitting with him in a field with him cuddled up to me and him like scampering off, me recalling him back, him lying on my legs, me stroking him, scampering off again, just for it to be a really exciting, loving experience for him. And for me to just enjoy bonding with him rather than going, I need to train my dog, because that is training my dog. It's training my dog that actually coming back to me is great and it's fun. And he's in that lovely puppy stage where it's all very easy before he gets a little bit older, and I'm making the most of that. But what we forget is that whilst Watson's lying on my lap with his legs in the air, thinking life's wonderful, actually, by me stroking him, my cortisol levels, my stress levels are lowering. That's a biological factor that happens. Now, if you think about actually how much we stroke our dog during gun dog training, and then we wonder why we're stressed. So we think, how are the cortisol levels going down? I'm gun dog training. Yeah, but actually, what am I doing when I'm gun dog training? The other really exciting thing we have, and it's slightly more in women than it is in men when we look at research, when we talk about dogs and spending time with dogs, is we actually release oxytocin as well, which is that mother-child bonding hormone. So actually, by having those really powerful moments with our dogs, as much as we might think, oh, we're absent-mindedly just stroking them while they're sitting on the sofa, or we're sitting in a field, or we're doing some steadiness at a park bench and I'm absent-mindedly stroking my dog's head. I'm not. I'm still training my dog. I am bonding with my dog hormonally, not just emotionally as we focus on when we think about training. I'm reducing my cortisol levels. I'm helping the dog reduce their cortisol levels as long as they don't get overstimulated by touch. How is that not rewarding? And we do it so little in dog training, so little, if at all, for a lot of us.
There's 2 examples of this week, which I'm like, I don't know whether because of what I've been going through, I'm really aware of other things. Today, I rushed to the shopping centre because I had to get some stuff for holidays. And I literally went into the toilets and the chap was cleaning the toilets. I went in and it was immaculately clean. It smelled beautiful. There was soap there. There was toilet paper there. And I was just so pleased. Like for a moment, I stopped to appreciate how
toilet gratitude, Jo.
Yeah, and then I came out and I said to the chap, I said, "Excuse me, the toilet," and he looked at me as if I was going to complain. I said, "Thank you so much. So this toilet is so clean and so lovely." And he smiled. And I said, "You had soap in the dispensers for us. It smelled nice in there. I wasn't thirsty." And he just started laughing and he gave me this big, huge smile. And I thought, how many times in his day does he stop to recognize he's doing a good job? How many times in the day does somebody tell him he's doing a good job? And the other point of this as well, where I felt it again this week, is on Wednesday night when we were doing the lives, Ask Us Anything with our members, and we were talking about how much, like when we give certifications to our members and they get badges and certificates, how lovely it is to be acknowledged and reward yourself for a job well done by taking part in that process. Because in school, when you're little, literally, you draw the worst picture in the world, somebody gives you a gold star. You do up a shoelace, somebody acts like you just built the Eiffel Tower. And then as we get older, we stop having that. And we certainly don't replace it, I don't think, with it doing for ourselves, because we almost feel it's egotistical to do it. We almost feel it's wrong to say, I did a bloody good job there.
Yeah, and I think some of that's a cultural thing for the majority of our listeners that are British. We get told don't boast. We show off. No one likes to show off. And so we get taught from quite a young age that actually celebrating wins maybe isn't the right thing to do. And actually, there is a huge difference between celebrating achievements and running around with a big old ego. And for the majority of us, we train alone, our dogs. It's very rare. We might train up, I don't know, meet up with the odd, hopefully other LWDG member or a friend or whatever else, maybe once a week, for some people even less, if at all. So we train on our own. So we don't even have anyone else witnessing it to go, blimey, good job on that one. That was really good. Yeah, or do you know what? I think he's getting the hang of that now. Like, he's way better than he was a couple of weeks ago. So it's very hard for us because we don't get that external validation from anybody else. So I think that's why community is so important, whether it's by posting on the forum and having each other support each other. We tend to see a lot of the stuff is around the negatives, around like I'm stuck with. And it comes, if we think about a lot of our lives, even when for those of us who've got full-time jobs or part-time jobs, we generally only have communications when things go wrong, rather than when things go right. So we often apply those same rules to our dog training. We focus on what went wrong or didn't go to plan, as I prefer to say it, not necessarily wrong, just didn't go to plan, than actually what went really well. And that might just be, do you know what? His sit is super quick suddenly, like really neat, really quick. Okay, we did a lap of the field with a dummy in his mouth. We can work on that. But do you know what? When I recalled him to come back to the car, he came straight back. That was nice. That was good. But because we often don't have other people witnessing us, and a lot of us are too scared to video ourselves, we focus on the one thing that maybe didn't go to plan, or two things that didn't go to plan. I think, and I would challenge in fact, anyone listening to this that's a member, challenge me to this. I'd love it. Post a video where your entire training session went wrong, because there won't be one. Something in that session will have gone right. So it's really important that, yes, absolutely, it's about working on the things that haven't gone to plan, but also acknowledging, do you know what, that was really nice. There was a moment where he made really good eye contact with me, or there was a moment where actually, do you know what, we just worked together for 10-15 seconds and it was beautiful. It was so nice. That's that sweet spot that most of us look for. But for those of us who train our dogs, we often train alone. When we're out working our dogs, even on the sheep season, we don't have the other beaters or the gamekeeper going, your dog's incredible. Unless occasionally you do, if you've got a really good group of people. But we don't get a huge amount of accolade in gun dog work unless we trial our dogs. And then that's fraught with a whole new amount of anxiety and tension, because it doesn't get recognised. It's just our dogs doing our job and us doing our job as beaters or dog trainers. So it becomes very hard to find that bit when we reward. So if we think about it, when we train our dog, we reward the dog when they've met a criteria. So the dog has come back and they've retrieved the dummy to hand, or they have done the stop whistle correctly, or they have sat for 10 seconds. So there is a criteria that we expect our dog to do. And when they meet that criteria, the reward comes in. So if you think about that for yourself, what criteria are you setting for you to meet the reward? And the problem is we don't set any criteria at all, so the reward never happens.
Yeah, because if you think about it, I know for me, when my dog does something perfectly, I know for a fact I almost automatically reward in my body, because I feel that rush of, oh my God, that went so well. I feel that, but I certainly haven't been, but I am going to make steps to go in. Oh my God, that went so well. Well done, Joe, you trained that. Just putting that extra bit in so that I'm not thinking, because I think we all do it. or we shouldn't, but we all do it. When it goes really well, it's because the dog's amazing and the dog got it right. And we're like, well done, dog. All about the dog. Dog's brilliant. And then when it goes wrong, it's, oh, we are shit. Not the dog. The dog gets rewarded and applauded for everything in our training section that goes brilliantly. Everything that goes badly, it is us as the trainer's fault. And we have this like hard line of that, which is bonkers, isn't it? We're either both equally in some way responsible for when it goes wrong and when it goes right, or there's like a portioning of blame and responsibility and success that we've got completely skewed.
Yeah, and I think there's a third factor, the environment as well. And then we go, I should have magically accounted that horse was going to arrive out of that bit of woodland at this time where my dog's doing its first retrieve. No, there's the environment. So there's a number of factors. But I think there is still that bit, and I speak to a lot of the ladies about this. I'm like, you forget you're a team. And there are times where I absolutely forget that I'm a team with my dog, and I feel like we're just bashing heads I'm like, why? I've asked you to do this. You know what you're doing. Why are you not doing it? But exactly as you said, if the dog does something brilliant, we're like, the dog's done something brilliant, not we've done something brilliant together. Because actually, who trained your dog? And for the majority of us, it's us. Yes, we have the guidance of trainers, and that's fantastic. And they help us out on the sessions that we have with them. But generally, the person that sticks up every day, that feeds our dog, that picks up their poo, that makes sure they're okay, that gets them to the vets, that reads the books, that does the webinars, that does the masterclasses, that posts on the forum, that's not your dog. That's you. And you need all of that. And it's your responsibility to bring that to your dog because your dog can't do it. But vice versa, you are then a team with your dog. You're not two separate entities.
Yeah, and I almost think as well, even within, like you're talking there about like webinars and turning up for coaching and that, we don't even say well done for that. We certainly don't do it when we're, I think, in college and university, when we don't have to do there. I don't have to be there. We don't turn around and say, oh, well done, I turned up for class today. Because again, that British ego thing is like, why am I recognizing this fact? We should be. But even like when we've taken time out of our day to listen to a podcast, how many of us think Dan for spending that 30 minutes more learning? We just don't. It's not part of our psyche, but it's such an important part of it. And it's important not just for a rewarding, to keep us going, to keep us training perspective, but also for our well-being and our health.
Yeah, everything. And I know we speak about this all the time. It's about that level of balance. And for all of us, it's different. For some of us, we need much more time on our own than others. Other people need a huge amount more social interaction. For other people, that would feel forced and really painful and uncomfortable. For some people, they want to train their dog for hours every day because they have the ability, the capacity, the space. For other people, it's 10 minutes in their garden for the majority of the week because of life. It's trying to find that balance between my relationship with my dog, my training with my dog, myself rewarding the dog, and myself rewarding myself for the journey that I've chosen to go on with my dog. And that for a lot of us is uncomfortable because for the majority of us, if not all of us, we've chosen to engage in this relationship with our dogs. Now, maybe knowing a lot of our dogs, we would have picked a different dog, who knows? As much as I've had a really difficult experience with Scout as my first puppy, Watson so far has been a dream. Wouldn't change either of them for the world. They've had two very different personalities, and I am learning so much from the both of them. I've chosen that little soul when he was a little puppy in his little farm in Wales frolicking around. He hasn't chosen that. I've chosen this life for him. I've chosen to remove him from his litter mates, take him home, and to essentially be my property, unfortunately, as we still see our dogs, but for me to try and get the best out of him. And that's a huge amount of dedication. And I've not rewarded myself for that. That's a huge amount of time, effort, blood, sweat, tears, laughter, poop, everything else that comes with dogs. Money, a lot of money, many dummies and leads and other assorted accoutrement that I have in my gun dog repertoire. And that's great and that's enjoyable. But I think sometimes it's really important to strip it back. And to strip it back is me as a human with wants and needs and emotions and want to have connection, absolutely adoring what quite frankly is sometimes a complete turd of a dog, but also a fantastic dog, and we've chosen to have that bond. And that's pretty special. And for me, that is a reward. That is a reward. Like the first time he went to sleep on the sofa, I was like, oh my God, he's asleep finally after 8 months. This thing is asleep out of the crate. I wanted to have a party, but I was too scared to wake it up. But that in itself is a reward. The first time I've got my dog through a puppy and not weeing in the house for a day, that's progress. That should be rewarded. But we reward the puppy and we don't reward ourselves. And for me, I think what's really key, what I do to reward myself, is I keep a journal of what I've done with my dogs. Because A, when I get other dogs, I can look back and go, is that similar? Do I remember that happening with my past dog? Not necessarily from an age comparison, because dogs do things at different times, but it gives me a time to go, this didn't go to plan, and I was really upset about it, or angry about it, or I was really frustrated with my dog and I had to walk away for a moment, but this went well. And I hope in years and years to come, those journals will actually become lovely stories between me and my dog, which I can look back and be quite proud of. So for me, that's a lovely reward that I get to have, that I get to go home, reflect on it, and hopefully in 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, I'll hear all these stories of trials, tribulations, and frustration with these dogs that I've chosen to love.
I think that's one of the most amazing things about our Magic Month planner as well, though, is the fact that for me, because of my operations and because of my age, my brain fog can be really bad. I cannot remember things. And as you've heard me for the last 3 years, shall I breed Ella, shan't I? And I'm really thinking this is the year I will breed her. Really important to me to bring my father's line and my uncle's lines together. Incredible lines, incredible trialing lines, and start from scratch. Part of me is a bit like, oh my God, I'm going to start scratch with the puppy, what you do. And bear in mind, Ella was born 6 years ago, so Dad was still alive. Dad helped me, and he told me what to do, and I did. And I didn't really think, and we certainly didn't have a Magic Month planner. But now I'm like, how good would it be to have that Magic Month planner and go, what did I do at the beginning? Because I'm really nervous about doing it this time on my own, even down to things like mating, because I've got the sire and the dam. Do you know what I mean? I've got both of them. So I'm going to have to be there for that process. I'm going to have to be conscious of the choices I make. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just wish I had something that took me back to when I did it myself before. Because books are great and all books are fabulous because we all learn something. I've learned something from every single book I've ever read. I can honestly say that. Even if I've not agreed with most of the book, I've always learned something. But have my own thoughts on something would be more, they would be more useful to me in the fact that I could remember what I thought about that process at the time. And also from the fact that when the pup's born, when I choose one to keep, okay, what am I going to do this time that I did last time that worked? What am I not going to do that I did last time? Because we're creatures of habit. Will I make the same mistake again? Or will my journal then say, don't do that. That didn't work with this dog. And bear in mind, not every dog's the same. Every dog's different. But you know, that whole being able to go back to it. And the reward I would get from that of going, well done, Joe, you kept a journal. So now you can remember this time.
Yeah, and I think for me, what's been really nice is it reminds you that you get through it. It's that reminder of you turn over the first, I don't know, 30 pages and your dog's still weeing in the house or whatever it's up to. And then it does stop. The journal doesn't end. It keeps going. It keeps getting better. And then there's some days where you're like, my dog did this and it was amazing and I felt great and I really feel like I'm connecting with my dog. And then you're like, my dog's an idiot. Why have I got him? Maybe I should just use him for this instead or whatever else. But it reminds you that our training is not linear in any way, shape, or form. And I think what separates that out from an instructional book is it doesn't have those peaks and troughs. It doesn't have that in there. It's just like, these are some great exercises you can do with your dog, and they're fantastic for reference. It's not saying that those books shouldn't exist, because they're fantastic for training our dogs, and I've got loads of them. But what it doesn't account for is the emotional journey that we go through with our dog, where you're like, wow, it's taking him out the third day in a row and he's still on the long line and he's still being an idiot. And you're like, but then you can skip forward 4 months and you can be like, had him off the long line today and he recalled and it was brilliant. So it's that reminder. And what those books teach me, those journals, and I did exactly the same when I used to keep my hawk, is the importance of persistence and the importance of showing up every time, even though you might have your heart in your mouth thinking, oh, hope to God this goes to plan. But again, it goes back to, I've never seen a dog training session ever where everything has gone wrong. There's always something that's gone right. And those journals are a really good way of keeping that.
I also think as well, like when we're talking about the processes we go through on reflection when we're journaling and how that can be rewarding, there are other ways we can reward, because that's off the field. There are other ways we can reward on the field just for a couple of seconds, aren't they? So can we talk a little bit about how, not like your body position, but just basically thinking about your body's mechanics, good posture, things like that. How, because we always say to people when it's all going wrong, okay, step back and breathe. And we give them this not a mantra, but it's like a concept of what they need to do to calm down. What can we do to reward in a similar way?
So for me, the word that always comes to me is pause. Just pause. So just not even step away or whatever that might, just pause. Because what happens is if I take my dog out onto the field, let's say for example, I'm doing that wonderful exercise of healed work, which all of us hate. It's one of the most important things we do with our dogs, and all of us despise it and we want it over and done as quickly as possible. And then we realise that we never stop training heel work, really. It's just an endurance exercise that we go through. Unless you love doing whatever that amazing heel work, very jealous of all of that. But when I think about me doing heel work with my dog, I'm thinking about the dog, I'm thinking about the dog's position, I'm thinking about my hands, I'm thinking about how I'm holding the lead, I'm thinking about how and when I'm going to reward. And if you think I'm standing in this field, and if you imagine it's a camera lens, that camera lens is focused on just me, just the dog, just the lead, quite frankly, just his gob probably, if I'm still treating treats as I'm getting along with it. That's all we focus on. So it's such a kind of microscopic view of that. And that can become really intense, really, really intense. And we're so focused on the dog and our body's tensing up and what am I doing the lead and when do I put the treat in his mouth or what am I doing and where is his legs, where's my leg? Am I stopping enough? Am I turning enough? Am I changing pace enough? And it becomes this microscopic, intense situation, which is really stressful, depending on how our heel work's going. What if we just zoomed out? What if you just stopped and paused and you just imagine that camera lens coming off, almost like a drone coming out and taking in the full view? I am in a field. There is soil under my feet, grass under my feet. Maybe the wind's blowing. Maybe there's trees in the distance. Maybe I can smell something nice. Maybe it's just the smell of cut grass or whatever's growing in the field next to me or whatever that might be. And reminding myself that it doesn't have to be that intense, that I am part of something massive. I'm part of the world. And by almost zooming out of that and taking off that intense focus on that tiny thing, it can give us perspective. We tend to stand up straight, especially when we're doing heel work. We tend to be a little bit more hunched over our dogs because we're looking at what they're doing. We're looking at what we're doing. Just stand for a moment, pause, look around you, look at where you are. It might be that you're looking at nature. It might be somewhere really beautiful. It might be not. It might be that you're on a housing estate somewhere and you're actually just taking in the surroundings of what's going on around you for a moment because it's a quick round the block bit of heel work before you have to feed the kids. But it's about reminding yourself this is bigger. So even if you're standing on that housing estate, wonder what's going on in the other houses. Are they making dinner? Are they watching telly? Just reminding yourself in the nicest way, and I don't mean it in an egotistical way, it's not all about you. It doesn't have to be that intense. The rest of the world is carrying on. They're getting on with their lives. It's just you and your dog. And although that relationship is really important, it doesn't have to become everything, because when it is everything to us, when it doesn't go to plan, everything has gone wrong, rather than just it was a training session that didn't go to plan. That's fine.
Yeah. And doing that and then building on that of when you drone out of being saying, look, I'm out, I'm doing it. The dog is training, the dog is learning. Because like me and you said about nothing goes wrong in a session, there's always something good in a book. There is going to be something in that 10 minutes, those 15 minutes, that 1 hour and 15 minutes where your dog is doing stuff habitually that you've already trained that it's doing well.
Even if it's just my dog's not, I'm out with my owner and this is quite cool, and you've got a bit of vitamin D because it's sunlight, that's still in itself something.
So what final advice or encouragement would you give to our community about the importance of self-care and rewarding ourselves as part of our overall well-being and success in dog training?
So I would absolutely say set yourself criteria for the reward, otherwise you're not going to know when to do it. The same way we train our dogs. And that criteria one day might be different to the next day, the same as our dogs. So let's say, for example, my criteria if I'm using my dog on cold game is going to be very different to what I'm going to expect him to do if I'm using dummies because he's less experienced. So if I'm having a really tough day, my criteria for reward might be I've taken my dog and done heel work around the block. But another day where I've planned for it and I got all excited because I listened to my podcast and I've read my book and I've written my list of what I want to do with my dog, I might set my criteria a little bit higher. Of actually, my objective is to do an hour of dog training and to journal about it when I get home, and that's going to be the reward. So I would absolutely think about setting your criteria before you go, because when you've already had the emotion zooming around whether they're really good ones or not so good ones, depending how the training's going, it's going to be harder for you to set it. Share your experiences. If you can't reward yourself, let other people do it, because they will be able to see the good in your session that you probably can't. Or someone can say, yeah, but that recall was fantastic. You're thinking, yeah, but he didn't bring the retrieve back. Yeah, but the recall was brilliant. So that's good. You don't have to have him on a long line anymore. And look, 6 months ago, you were crying because you never thought he was going to be off a long line. They can sometimes see your journey clearer than you can because they can be objective about it when we can't. And the last bit that I would absolutely say is what I said really early on, is about the idea is that a reward should be nourishing to us. It should be something that we gain something positive from, whether that's nice food, whether it's time out in nature, whether it's coming home and treating yourself to 10 pages of your book, whatever that might be. It's got to be something that nourishes ourselves, and it doesn't necessarily have to be around food or finances. We often focus and think it's got to be about buying ourselves something, or we've survived today, so I get to have a glass of wine.
So thank you very much for yet again another amazing podcast. We hope our community has absolutely loved it. Thank you for sharing your insights and your expertise, because without a doubt, our community thrive from Monday morning mindsets because it sets them up for the week. Our experts are there to tell them how to do things, what to do, and you are there to tell them they can do it. And I think we've got the perfect balance of what is needed to be a successful female owner of a dog. Your advice is definitely going to help us, and I hope it's going to help all our listeners. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope it gives you greater joy in your personal well-being and in your dog training, because I think we tend to forget about ourselves so much when really we should be putting ourselves at the forefront, even though we spend a lot of time feeling guilty for doing so. For our society members, there's loads coming up with them above and beyond our Monday morning mindset, so look out for that. And for those of you who are listening to us on Found and Fetched It and want some help with your training, please go along to Instagram, type in freebies or type Kickstart into the messages, and we'll either send you a free course or free PDFs to help you with your dog training. That's all for this week. We hope you've enjoyed. Please like, subscribe and review. Your reviews help other people to find us, and we shall speak to you all next week. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.